metaphysics mean? Somebody give me a definition of metaphysics.
It's what it's what Aristotle wrote about.
Okay, he wrote about metaphysics, yeah. In his book, After Physics, it was after physics in the book First Philosophy, it was actually called, but it kind of yielded the term metaphysics being what comes after physics, what's beyond physics. And so metaphysics is a subject that incorporates basically what all is in reality. Whether it's physical or what we might term non-physical, if there's such a thing. It incorporates all of that. Have you ever heard the term metaphysics before you came to class, or maybe in a religious context? You go to a bookstore and they might, metaphysics, they might talk about it, and they're typically, they're more talking about spiritual or things of a religious nature. A lot of times is what the term metaphysics has come to mean in our culture, but it hasn't been used that way predominantly historically. It's the philosophical investigation of the nature, constitution, and structure of reality. This is a definition. This is, for the purposes of this course, this is our definition. All right? It's not that it couldn't be worded differently, or there may not be a different, just as accurate definition, but this, for our purposes, is what we're going to use. Philosophical investigation of the nature, constitution, and structure of reality. So, what's reality like? What's it made out of? How is it structured, fit together, so on and so forth? These are all questions that people have had since probably the beginning of time. But in a philosophical sense, metaphysics, even before it was formally called such, was really the big question of philosophers. We're going to, our next topic, we'll get into the pre-Socratic philosophers, and you're going to see that in Western thought, historically, the big question was kind of, what all is in the universe, and, how big is the universe, and what's it made out of? That was really a big question. What makes it work? What makes it tick? So on and so forth. Okay, these are, and I'm using modern terms, but basically that's what we see a lot of these early philosophers trying to get at. They're looking at what is it that makes all this work, and this is one of the big questions, and that's a metaphysical question. So really, philosophy in Western philosophy, as we're studying this course, in its earliest inception over in the Greek world there in Europe, it kind of, in its inception, has always been looking for those metaphysical questions. Then that kind of changes along when we've seen Descartes. You guys have already studied René Descartes. The question kind of shifted a little bit, and it went away so much from what's everything made out of, this kind of thing, to how do we know? How do we know, anything for sure, this kind of thing. Trying to verify our certitude of knowledge. So that was a major shift that took place with Descartes. But in the realm of metaphysics, we're going to look at three major categories. The first one is idealism. Okay? And I don't want you to confuse this with transcendental idealism. This is just idealism, or empirical idealism as I termed it in epistemology. But we're looking at it from a different angle, and that's what I do not want you to confuse. We're talking about idealism in the context of what all is real, what all exists. And for Berkeley, as you remember, I'm sure you just took a test on it, so I know you guys know Berkeley. George Berkeley is the guy that says what kind of entities exist. There's only two kinds, Sian. Remember? What are those two kinds? Infinite and finite. Right. But they're mental entities. Perceivers. Okay? We're using different terms. Same thing though. So for Berkeley, there's only two kinds of existence. And they're both mental. Do you see what I'm saying? Because remember, for Berkeley, in a real simple way, there's no external existence of this desk, table, whatever we would call this thing. The thing attached to something else that I set stuff on. Okay, it is only its essence is perception. It's only there because I perceive it. It's only, or I should say because I perceive it. It's only there because someone perceives it. Some mental entity is perceiving it. Alright, so for Berkeley, that is all of reality. There's nothing outside of mental entities. There's nothing else. That's all there is. Alright, so that's idealism. Okay, materialism, there are only material entities. I worded that as a question, I shouldn't have. Hobbes is going to be the guy, and we don't talk a whole lot about him, but he's the kind of the predominant materialist. He's the main guy that we're going to talk about with materialism. There are only material in it. None of this, don't talk about spiritual stuff, don't talk about non-physical reality. He has no time for that. Hobbes has got no time for that. Okay? It's just, it is what it is. So, for him, of course, there wouldn't be any kind of other sphere of existence, would there? Or an afterlife or anything of that nature. This is it. Dirt's dirt, and when you die you turn to dirt, and that's what you are. That's it. That's all you got. So, that's pretty much Hobbes. Okay, dualism, and that's where Descartes was falling. That's really one of the things that Descartes was getting at that we didn't talk a lot about. But one of the things that Descartes was trying to prove with his meditations is that there's a part of you that's not physical, is what he's trying to prove. Okay, I'm not saying he does. I'm saying that was something that's sort of reading between the lines with him, that you get out of reading that he is trying to push that there are two kinds of reality together, and you represent that very composite of reality. Because inside of you is the mental part, and then there's the physical part. And mentally you can separate your mind from your body. Now he's not saying you can do that in actuality, he's saying in the meditation, in your imagination you can do that. Alright? But that's what he's getting at. Descartes is trying to show that there's two parts to you. Okay? You got that mental or soulish or whatever part, and then you've got the physical part. If you want to call it soul, spirit, mind, probably mind would be the best way. He was Catholic by affiliation, so he had some religious beliefs to some degree. How sincere he was in that, that's another question. But he does seem to kind of go along those lines of thinking that human beings are both a composite of physical, material existence and a mental existence, something that is not physical. So those are the three major categories of metaphysics. All right. Okay. Now, this poses a problem if there are two kinds of existence. If there is a mental and a material, and there are two different types of two different types of reality, and yet in a human being they're combined, this poses a problem that has been dealt with for centuries. And this is called the mind-body connection problem. All right. Okay, for Plato, the mind is separate from the body. Okay? What does Plato end up being? A dualist, right? Okay, for Aristotle, no. Aristotle says body and soul are inseparable. So what does that really more make him? Materialist. Okay? Without pushing too hard on those, I think that's where, as you study them, that you would probably lump them into those two categories. How many of you heard, we have a strictly Platonic relationship? You ever heard that?
Yeah.
Platonic. Oh, Plato. That's where that's coming from. Platonic. Plato. We strictly have a mental connection. We're not physically involved or anything like that. See?
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
Okay.
Platonic, Plato. That's where the word comes from. Okay? So that's what it's talking about. In other words, we're strictly, have this mental connection. We're good friends or whatever